Hello everyone. All right, good to see you again. Wish I could see you guys. I wish we could be in class, but you know the situation and we're not in class, so next best thing, I guess. Still working on these videos here. So in this one here today, we're in chapter 20, page 278, okay? Chapter 20, 278, and we're going to do this starter current draw test, or we're going to try to if everything goes well. Been a little bit of a day for me today, but that's how it goes sometimes, right? All right, back to the story here. Starter amperage test, okay, page 278. And we're going to do the task sheet number 53 here, okay? And again, yes, we're using the old faithful Jeep here to do this. All right? All right, here we go. So, let's talk about this a little bit. Starter amperage test. It's a good test to do. It's a useful test. Do it quite often. I will tell you, though, that nowadays, we don't really have a lot of starter problems, at least with General Motors cars, occasionally. But in the last 8 years that I worked at the dealership, this last particular dealership, Hudeberg, I probably only replaced, I don't know, maybe 5 starters, maybe. So we don't have a lot of trouble with it. But it's a good test to run. It's a good test to know how it works and why we do it and so forth. So it says right off the bat there on 278 the reasons for doing this, okay? So if we have slow cranking or a no crank condition, the engine's turning over slow or sounds like it's hesitating a little bit, okay? After you hear these things a few times and see them a few times, you kind of understand what they're talking about there. You get a feel for it. You know you need to run this test, okay? You need to kind of know what it sounds like. So starters can make several different kinds of noises. But we want to see how this particular deal plays out, okay? So in preparation for that, it says there, like everything else, we want to make sure the battery is up to charge. I think it says there at least 75% or more, okay? We've talked about that before also in our videos. We want to make sure we got a good battery. We want to make sure the battery cables are clean and that they're tight. That's always the case in any kind of electrical problem like this that we're checking. Okay, you might even want to check connections at the starter too. That's a good place to look. Particularly, sometimes the starter's already been replaced or was replaced a few months ago, and maybe it wasn't installed properly. Okay, so maybe the connections are loose at the starter also. So you want to make sure all the connections are good at the battery and at the starter, because this is a high load component. Okay, specifications he talks about there now. So the specifications are on your chart here and on your task sheet and in the book. And these are general specifications, but they're pretty close. They're pretty good guidelines. So he says, like a 4-cylinder should be 150 to 185 amps. And these are all at room temperature. Temperature has a play in all these type tests, remember? 6-cylinder engines, 160 to 200. 8-cylinder engines, 185 to 250. Now, I want you to know here that these are all gasoline engine ratings here, okay? So if you have a diesel engine, that diesel engine starter is going to be a lot higher. Remember, it has a lot higher compression ratio, things like that. So that cranking amperage is going to boost way on up on those. So you definitely want to look those specifications up in the service information and know exactly what you're supposed to be and any particulars of that test that they want you to do. Okay? A little windy out here today. All right. I'm blowing my pages, but all right. Next page on page 279. Excessive current draw may indicate one or more of the following: binding of the starter armature as a result of worn bushings. Okay? All right. Oil too thick. Viscosity too high. All right. Not very common, but don't want to overlook anything sometimes. Shorted or grounded starter windings or cables. Those windings would be inside the starter, of course. Tight or seized engine. That'll definitely do it. If the engine's seized up or has a mechanical problem of some type, yeah, it's going to crank slow or not at all. But that's a different scenario. At that point, if you think that's the case, then you're going to take a socket and a breakover bar and put it on the crankshaft and see if you can turn it by hand and see if it's locked up. If the engine's locked up, don't worry about putting the starter on it, okay? It's still not going to work. All right. All right. Starter motor itself, fuel coils or armature. Yeah, the starter itself, that's typically what the problem is, if there is a problem like this. I've also included on Moodle a little short, it's about 40-second video of a starter that's bad that I had back in the dealership some time ago. You might want to take a look at that. It's like I say, it's really short, but it shows what it looks like, kind of what it sounds like. The smoke just comes out of it when you engage the starter. So it's a little humorous in a way, but it shows you what's going on there, okay? So that's one example of how the starter may sound or behave. All right? So, low amperage draw, or slow cranking or no cranking, indicates one or more of the following. Dirty or corroded battery connections, there again, okay? High internal resistance in the battery cables. So we've looked at battery cable resistance before. High internal starter motor resistance, poor ground connection between the starter motor and the engine block. Okay, you have to remember that the starter motor's ground comes from being directly bolted to the engine block, okay? So you got a big power cable coming to it, and then the ground side of everything here is the direct connection, the mechanical, physical connection of the starter to the engine, okay? And then it comes back through the engine to the negative battery cable that's usually attached to the engine, and then back to the battery, okay? So, checking those battery cables, checking that connection at the starter motor itself and at the block are all important too, especially if maybe that battery, or that starter, I'm sorry, has been replaced and maybe just wasn't installed properly and things like that. So don't overlook anything like that. Sometimes it's a very simple answer to the question, okay? So don't overlook any connections and so forth, all right? Okay, so I think we are ready to do the test on the vehicle here. So we've got our task sheet number 53. Set it up here. And we'll take the camera off the stand here. Come over to the vehicle. I'm going to double check something here real quick. Since this is a manual transmission, I'm going to double check here and make sure this thing's in neutral so it doesn't run over me and kill me. Okay? We wouldn't want that today. And I also have a wheel chalk, if you will, here. I got a ramp in that back tire. All right. So I've got the voltmeter connected to the battery. You can see it's 12.6 volts, so that's good. So there's a couple different testers that you can use. Today I'm going to use this simple little Craftsman tester right here. That's an inductive pickup, okay? And there's a couple different ways you can do this as far as cranking the engine too. Today what I'm going to do is I'm going to just do it right here. The easiest way to do it is right here at the starter relay, okay? So we have our relay box here, and we have our legend over here. It says starter relay right there, okay? Take this starter relay out. Left-handed if I can. There it goes. And as we've talked about relays before, on the side of the relay is the schematic. So 87 and 30, right, are our two terminals, are in and out, all right? So in this case, they're also numbered 5 and 3. It's Chrysler, what can I tell you? All right, so 5 and 3 is this terminal and this terminal, okay? This one and this one. I don't know if you can see that in the video or not there, but it's 5 and 3, okay? So if we jumper those two across, this starter will engage and crank for us. So we're going to set this meter over here to DC amps, okay? DC amps, okay? And it's reading wrong right now. We're going to zero it. Might need to take it off and start over. Okay. DC amps. Let's see here. Now, a while ago that thing reset. Better. Let's try to get this glare off of it. Sorry. There we go. Now it says DC. I know what it was doing there a while ago. There it goes. Now it says 0. A little trouble with my meter. Sorry about that. So now it says 0. Okay, and we're at DC amps. Very good. And I just have a voltmeter here as a little bit of a preliminary check, basic check for our battery condition. All right, so we're going to do terminals 3 and 5, 87 and 30 in the fuse box right here. So it's going to be these two front ones right here. Use a simple little jumper wire here. We're going to plug this one in and jumper across the relay. Let me make sure that I've got a good angle at this here so you can see it. Okay. So we got a little bit of a glare thing going on outside here today. There we go. That looks pretty close. Here we go. Ready? There we go. We got a pretty good reading there. It's like 120 amps. Okay. So again, all I did was take this jumper wire and go across 3 and 5, or 87 and 30, just like this. 123 amps. Okay. So according to that, we're well within specs. It's below that 160 to 200 amps, but that's not low enough to be a problem because the thing cranks fine, right? If it didn't crank fine, then there might be another problem, but it cranks just fine. You can tell by the sound of it. Okay? All right. Let's do this one more time. Let's see what our battery voltage dropped down to during that, just for fun of it. Pretty good. Just a little over 11 there. So our battery's holding real well there. It's putting out 123, or it's requiring 123, 125 amps to crank this 6-cylinder engine over. Okay, so let me back that up. There we go. So that looks pretty good. That's what we did right here, basically. All right. I didn't use the ignition switch. I just jumpered the relay. Make it easier on yourself. Okay. Whatever's the easiest way to do that. You can also put a remote starter switch and connect it to the starter down there. Starter on this vehicle is right down there. Let's see if we can zoom in on that a little bit. There it is. There it is right there. Okay. We can see the solenoid wire connection and then the battery cable coming to it. The red cable right there going right to the starter. So you can connect right down there too, but it's a little bit harder to get to. But it's just whatever you've got. But the starter relay is very easy to do. Very easy to do. No big deal. Okay, let's put the starter relay back in. There we go. Looks good. All right, let me put this back on the stand here real quick. So, whoops. Turn the screen around so I can see. Okay, very simple little test. And really all you need is a inductive pickup like that. And that's a cheap one there. That's from Craftsman. Okay. Now, you can also use the VAT40. And it shows a picture of a VAT40 on figure 20-5 in your book. And the VAT40 is a super tool for doing a test like this. It takes minimum connections. You just hook the tool to the battery, then you have an inductive pickup there, and it'll give you voltage and amperage on the, that you can see it simultaneously there, and you can check the battery, you can check the starter, and you can check the alternator, all in just like 3 easy steps there almost. So it's a super good tool. I just don't have one of those here, so I'm showing you another way to do it. But this tool I have here from Craftsman, yeah, I don't know how much it was, but I don't think it was very expensive at all. Okay, now it's not sensitive enough to do that battery drain test, but it is close enough to do something like this on the starter and on the alternator output too. Okay, so very good. Well, at this point we take questions, but if you have any questions, certainly email me. But it's a fairly simple test. Appreciate you guys putting up with me on the videos. I appreciate you staying engaged and working on all the work that we're doing and trying to make the best of this global pandemic that we're in. And hope everybody's staying home as much as possible, staying safe, going to the fridge often, and watching all the videos on YouTube and whatever you're doing. Stay safe, keep learning, keep it alive, what you're doing with learning about cars and so forth. So, well, I guess that's all for today. All right. Just keep checking back on Moodle for assignments and emails, and appreciate you guys. Thanks.